Hello everyone, my name is Ben and welcome back to Pass the Aux Cord, a channel where call it what you want, call it fate, call it karma, call it watching Pat Jennington a little bit too much, but I have been dying to get into the genre that is Vaporwave for a very long time. I've really liked the aesthetics of it, I've liked the kind of morals behind it, the idea of it is somewhat similar to things like Plunderphonics and stuff like that I've been interested in the past, but Vaporwave isn't really something that I have ever listened to, but I have been dying to do so, and I actually received a few suggestions. I'll put the comment on screen right now, and thank you for that. I am glad to see that there was a slight amount of interest in this one at least, and thank you for stopping by for a little bit different of a video, because today I am going to be trying to get into Vaporwave. I've got a lineup of 5 albums. I'm going to be listening to these today and tomorrow, and after I listen to each one, I'm going to be doing a segment where I talk about my thoughts on the album, what I thought of it, basically a short review. I'm going to be going off the cuff without a script, tell you some of my favorite tracks, tell you some of my least favorite tracks, and just how it went in general. The 5 that I am absolutely sure that I'm going to listen to, although I may add a few more onto the list as we go along if I stumble upon some interesting things, are Macintosh plus Floral Shop, Saint Pepsi, Hit Vibes, Blank Banshee 1, Death's Dynamic Shroud, I'll Try Living Like This, Grocieries, Yes, We're Open. Some stuff looks really interesting, and a few of those are just like known essentials or just like the biggest albums in the genre or what got it started. But we're going to start this off with Macintosh Plus because I am very interested to see where the starting point of this all is, and that's commonly recognized as one of the big albums in the genre. So I'm gonna listen to Floral Shop by Macintosh Plus. If anything really interesting happens in between when I start and when I'm done with the album, I'm gonna throw on a little clip, update you along the way. We'll see how it goes. Ah shit, got another grail to add to the list. Yeah, one album in here, I'm already getting the appeal. I totally understand what people like about this, and I am glad that I'm looking at this with an open mindset rather than it just doing it for the meme standpoint, because I'm seeing all these comments on here just people ironically doing this, that, and the other thing. Man, yeah, I definitely get it. I can understand why this is a very good starter, because I feel like it didn't do very much weird. It just kind of existed in a very Vaporwave sort of way, and it was pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. It really hits you with this nostalgic feeling, and I realize entirely that's part of the goal. It just has an atmosphere to it that's very calming too. That really hit me in a good way. I mean, I was feeling kind of uptight and anxious today. I don't know why, it just hits me sometimes, staying inside all the time like this, not exactly good on the psyche. I try to get out every once in a while, but there's only so much you can do in the current state of the world. But I was absolutely chilling out to that album. We had a storm come through, and it cleared up while I was listening to it, and it really did it at a perfect time, because for most of that first portion it was raining. I'm watching the rain outside my window, and then as I'm getting into this brighter last portion, especially that last bit with the nature sounds, it starts to get more sunny, and so the weather really did its job while I was listening to this. It's kind of hard to find highlights in a record like this because it all kind of flows into each other and becomes one song almost. I mean, there's very distinct sections and it all definitely sounds different from each other, but if you're just listening to this front to start, and my apologies on my phone keeping going off, but when you listen to, track 1 going all the way down to 8, you really just get this full experience where each one rolls into each other very nicely. That second track on there, I mean, obviously I don't know what Japanese characters I'm looking at. I'm gonna assume those are Japanese characters. I don't know how to pronounce the name of this track, but that second one on there, that 7-minute track, it really did a lot. I mean, I feel like it just takes that very sample heavy aesthetic and just puts it to full use. I was also a really big fan of, I think it was track number 5. It had a much more dark, ominous kind of feel to it than the rest of the album did. It did get a little bit repetitive if I'm thinking of the right one, but still, that's something that I come to expect and really is just part of the vibe, and it doesn't end up bothering me. It's just something where I acknowledge the repetitiveness and it just kind of fits. And the last two on there, 7 and 8 as well, just did a really solid job of concluding this piece, this very relaxing album. Having the nature sounds going on in the last track really summed it up well. I appreciated the fact that it ended on a really bright note, because I feel like that's where it was all kind of leading up to. Either way, awesome stuff. Really like this record. I'm excited to check out more, just because I know that this isn't necessarily recognized as like one of the all-time greats, but it's pretty much the most essential and kind of the big starter vaporwave album. So I'm very glad to see where it goes from here. So I guess that basically summarizes my thoughts on it. Yeah, we'll be returning to it for sure. Gonna be a really good set of tracks to be putting on to just kind of chill out to. Really works for that. Next one I'm going to be listening to is Saint Pepsi's Hit Vibes, and I realize this kind of dips its toes more into the future funk genre from the descriptions of it that I have heard. So I did kind of want to check out that subgenre while I'm at it. I'm sure that I could do its own video on future funk. I know that there is a lot of it, but either way, I'm kind of wrapping it in just because it's a subgenre. I am really excited to check out future funk. I think it's going to appeal to me really well, and I'm about to go on a drive. Check that one out. Should be a fun time. Should be a fun time. I'll come back here and update everyone once I've heard that. My apologies, things came up yesterday and I wasn't able to report on this right away, so we're now talking in the next day as to yesterday. But I want to start this off by saying, goddamn, I love Hit Vibes by Saint Pepsi. I was kind of expecting to like this because, you know, I like my upbeat, fun music sometimes. It's much better to just chill out, play some fun stuff, you know, drive around to that. It was really good car music for what it was. You know, I said that way because I was going to go for a drive, put that on, did that, worked super well. This definitely makes me want to check out more future funk. I definitely will be doing that in the future, and I definitely want to see what Saint Pepsi has to offer. I know he goes by a different name sometimes, so I'm pretty sure there's a lot to explore in that vein, and I definitely will be, because I really loved what I was hearing on this one. A lot of people talk about, you know, being nostalgic for a time period that they didn't even live in when they listen to Vaporwave, and I totally feel that about the 80s when I listen to this. It really has that feeling to it. It's really got this nostalgic quality still to it, but very much so like some disco grooves going on. Just reminds me a lot of the pop from that era. I think the voice samples did a lot for this album, made it feel a little bit more cohesive, like one solid piece. You have the interlude, there is an actual interlude track on here, then you've got the outro, but there's also just like a few samples of just talking for a brief period that make it flow together a little bit better. I definitely am more distinct on what my favorites and least favorites are on this one. I feel like this was much more song based than Macintosh Plus, where that was much more based in the realm of ambience. The title track opening it up was absolutely a banger, but it does get better from there. Have Faith is the following one, and I thought that track was really fun. Cherry Pepsi just might be my favorite on the entire album. The drums on that track, so good, so crisp, so easy to nod your head along to. So good every time one of those hits, and it hits, you know, every couple seconds. So you got a lot to love on that track. It just really gets you in a good mood. I also think Strawberry Lemonade was definitely one of the better ones on the back half of this album. That one had a similar thing going on to Cherry Pepsi. It really did feel somewhat similar to that track. Either way, just as much of a banger as that one. But that does kind of bring up my one complaint with this album, and that is that I felt like the first half was stronger than the second half. You hit the interlude and it kind of chills out a little bit more, which I guess isn't necessarily a negative, but I really like the more upbeat sounds we were hearing on the first half of this album a little bit more, but it's still nothing that brings my enjoyment down by any means. When I'm listening to the whole piece, I feel like maybe if you had some more upbeat tracks on the ending portion too, it would make it feel like every song might be a little bit better. But as an album as a whole, I do totally understand why it was done like that. You know, it kind of chills out until it fades away sort of thing, and I do like that a little bit. I just think that the songs themselves on the second half I'm probably not going to revisit as much as the first half. I'm really kind of iffy on the tracks Skylar Spence and Miss You. I feel like both of those were just kind of there, and they didn't do a whole lot for me, but maybe they will on repeated listens. Those are just two examples that I thought of while I was listening to this. Overall, really great album. I'm going to be throwing this one on a lot as soon as I can re-listen to music whenever I please. Definitely a great one. I like this better than the Macintosh Plus album. And of course, the vinyl is more expensive, so crossing my fingers that that'll happen someday. So, two things real fast. There's a repress going on literally right now. You know I copped one. I know I copped one. It is coming to my house later this month, and I could not be more excited. So I'm going to link that below. If you're watching this on the first day, it might still be live on a pre-order, but if not, hopefully there'll still be some being sold on there. I'm not really entirely sure. Second thing is, I don't know why, but Audacity decided to fuck my audio for the next one, so you gotta deal with the camcorder audio. My sincere so I wasn't aware that Blank Banshee started at 0 rather than 1. 0 was the cover that I had seen before and I was familiar with. I just got a little mixed up there. So I figured why not start with the actual beginning. That does make a lot more sense to do, and this one is far more popular, so I figured it's probably the best one to start getting into things with as well. And we're 3 for 3 because I absolutely love that. I've been informed that this is more in the vapor trap subgenre, but we're kind of under umbrella terms right at the moment. But I am really liking these subgenres a lot because I can clearly see the distinct differences, and I am quite a fan of both of the last two styles that I checked out, because this is really cool. So where the St. Pepsi album that I just listened to more focused on some like upbeat disco vibes, this is far more in the ambient realm, somewhat similar to Macintosh Plus, but it also had some very like stand out electronic elements that were very prominent in the mix, and it didn't become like an ambient sort of fades altogether type experience. There was always something really catching me off guard, really loud in the mix and just very prominent. And you know, I use that as a comparison both times around here because it's the only other thing I'm really aware of, and I realize that there are probably very few similarities to people who are very well versed in the genre, but you know, I'm just putting it out there as this is my experience with this subgenre or genre so far. Yeah, almost every track on there was really cool. The transitions were amazing. Just from the first track to the second track, first track being Startup being just a introductory track on here, but that, the way it flowed into Wave Step was amazing. And that didn't necessarily stop there. It was all throughout the album. There was a lot of moments that I really liked the transitions. That was one of the coolest things about this album as well. As far as favorites and least favorites go on here, it really ended up more being a case of I liked the capital letter ones but not the lowercase ones as much. Wave Step is definitely the exception to the rule there, because that first real opening track definitely did it for me. But even then, Bath Salts coming straight away after it was way better in my opinion. But Venus Death Trap, Teen Pregnancy, and Dreamcast were really the tracks that didn't do much of anything for me. They just seemed a little bit more lackluster and less exciting than the other things on here. And even then, I wouldn't mind if those tracks were on. It's not something where I dislike them at all. It's just that comparatively speaking, not the greatest. Visualization was more of an interlude, but that one is also lowercase, so I guess it's technically an exception because I really love that. It was like having you close your eyes and visualize things, and I love it when tracks do that, kind of work in some sort of like meditation bit into it almost. Very cool. That was weirdly unsettling for what it was though. I think it was the combination of having the robot voice in there and the somewhat ominous, eerie samples in the back too. It ended up being far more unsettling than it was relaxing, and I have no idea if that was the goal or not. But then you have this extremely blissful transition into World Vision, and that was so neat. It just says something along the lines of open your eyes when you're ready, and then you just hear this, wow, it just comes in and it's really bright, and I love that. That was really neat. So definitely that duo of tracks was very nice. Speaking earlier in the album, Ammonia Clouds and Bath Salts also being back to back were a really great pairing of tracks. Those ones definitely had a lot more louder elements that I feel like really resemble the trap tendencies of Vapor Trap, and I was very appreciative of that. Photosynthesis and Cyber Zodiac, also really good tracks. I like those ones as well quite a lot, and I know that I like them a lot, but the fact that I can't really re-listen to this makes me have very limited talking points on it. But hey, I enjoyed the hell out of those ones. I know that much, and I really enjoyed this album too, so just as a whole, I like at least every track on here. And my only other gripe is just how Shutdown / Depression, the outro track, just ended. I mean, I feel like it needed a fade out or something, but it just kind of abruptly canceled itself. I don't know, it felt like it was going more places than it did, and it's like, oh, suddenly that's the end of the album. But, you know, I won't really fault it. I understand the, there could be like a artistic point behind that, I suppose. And yeah, really cool one. We're 3 for 3. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so I am currently 6 tracks into Death Dynamic Shrouds. I am so bad at saying that. I already messed it up before. I'll try living like this. And wow, this is a totally different experience than the other 3 that I already listened to already, you know? The one thing that I was really worried about getting into this genre is that it was going to be very oversaturated with the same things over and over, but we already have like 4 distinct categories, and I'm sure there's many more that I'm even yet to discover, and wow, this is very different than everything else. My only complaint so far is that they don't really relate to each other. The 6 songs that I've heard so far, they don't really feel like they flow into each other very well, but at the same time, it still is kind of under this umbrella effect of the same mood and atmosphere. Track number 4, it's a bunch of characters that I'm not sure of, was a very great one. I liked that quite a lot. Very large sounds to it, and once again, you got that very strong, crisp drum sample in there. That does so much for instrumental songs, I gotta say, man. That just brings it all to life for me. But everything on here has been, like, kind of weird, but still very enjoyable for sure. I'm liking where the vocal samples are put in, whether those be more melodic vocal samples or not. That has been really neat so far, like the somewhat distressing one that came at the end of track number 6. CD Factory, I believe, was the name of it. So yeah, I'm excited to hear the rest of this, and I'll update you on what I think of the rest of it when I'm done with it. I just figured I'd make a little part in the middle here before we got too carried away, because it's a very long one in comparison at almost an hour. Okay, so I just finished the whole album. That was Death's Dynamic Shrouds. I'll Try Living Like This, and wow, that one was also really good. Once again, for completely different reasons. I'm really liking how unique of experiences I'm having with each one of these different artists and albums, obviously. I stopped that before at track number 6, and I am glad I stopped it where I did, because immediately afterwards, the whole album gets even better. Like I said, I'm a really big fan of track number 4. That one had a lot of the elements that I liked later in that second half of the album, but track 7 came in, and damn, that song just sounded huge. There was so much to it, just really punched in a certain way. I'm not quite sure how to describe it, and but I have to say, I cranked up my bass a little bit. I just felt like it was a little bit better for the ambiance, and that was certainly not a mistake, because the bass on that track was really loud and booming and just worked so good. And then it transitions into the next one with these really nice synths, and yeah, really all of the transitions at this point in the album start getting so much better, and it's really cool how this last portion really did do that so well. Track number 9 on here ended up being kind of an interlude. It's less than 2 minutes, but it really makes good use of that time with a vocal sample that's then used to transition into 10, which is a more full song, but still a lot shorter in length than a lot of the ones on this album at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So when you put them together, they feel more like a complete song in comparison to everything else. But track number 10 was also absolutely crazy. And then these depressive vibes start coming in at 11 and go until 12, and damn, it really hits in an emotional way that you wouldn't expect purely instrumental music to do. It's got those rain sounds going in there, which is really perfect because it's starting to look cloudy out there. You might notice the room's a bit dark, and yeah, it's just filling the vibes completely so well. I could not be more happy with that. I don't really remember there being songs on here that didn't do a lot for me. I mean, I guess the first track wasn't super great, but I mean, that's just kind of leading into the rest of it. I'm not sure if I really liked Somebody Home too much. I don't remember it being a standout track to me, so I guess those two are the two that I'd throw on like least favorites, I guess. But all things considered, I really liked every song on there, and it's really great as a whole album experience, even if this one didn't quite seem to stick to the same overarching theme, just the kind of message behind it almost. The way that it felt, the emotion behind it seemed much more varied on this than the other ones I listened to, but it still felt like such a good listen in its entirety. Yeah, awesome album. We're gonna listen to Grocieries next, and that'll be the last one. Okay, so I just got done listening to Yes, We're Open by Grocieries, and that was one of the most unique experiences I've had with music in a while. The concept of that, to my understanding, is to create music that is similar to being in a grocery store late at night, and that is a extremely interesting concept to me, because the musical elements of the album itself sound very much like the royalty-free or just soundtrack music that would be playing in the overhead speakers. I have heard that a lot more times in like the 90s it was more like that. I don't know. My personal experience with most stores has just been that they play hit radio songs over the overhead, but at the same time, I do remember a few times in which I've heard some just instrumental, kind of like you're on hold, that sort of music. So it includes that and a lot of ambiance in the mix as well, and it really sells its vibe and atmosphere quite well. I'm not really going to go too far into specifics of favorites and least favorites with this one, because I feel like it's a little bit more complicated in that regard than the other ones we listened to. There's a lot missing in terms of actual songs on here. it really all transitions into each other very nicely, but still does include a lot of different types of sounds going on the whole time. This is separated, if you're not aware, into tracks, most of them being called aisle, such, and having a description of the aisle in the parentheses. And it did usually really fit the aesthetic of it to have that all be like the same named track, basically, because they all flow into each other really well, and it does give you that feeling of going around a corner and being in a different aisle. Of course, this is far more surreal than any experience I've had grocery shopping, but it does it nonetheless. It really takes that mood, that feeling, and does a lot more with it than I was expecting. I was kind of anticipating this to be my least favorite of the bunch, just because I felt like it might get kind of boring, but at no point did I really actually end up having that particular problem. Even though I said that I wasn't really going to break down favorites and least favorites all that much, I do want to demonstrate the fact that the named tracks that weren't like aisle, I really liked their, importance in the track list, and they did feel different. You have the opening moment here where it gives you the welcome sample, and you instantly feel like you're just getting into something, and it's very inviting but somehow still kind of desolate, and this does really represent how it would feel to just walk into this store late at night and there's nobody around, but it's still very inviting because that's just the atmosphere of a store. I definitely want to give a shout out to the Lost in the Freezer section interlude, because that did exactly what interludes are supposed to do, and it did it really, really well. I appreciated that song so much. That was just a really cool moment, and it just works weirdly well next to its description, and I guess it was just kind of a nice break from everything. And the way that checkout, have a nice day, and bronze level store loyalty card ends out the track listing works in a really cool way as well. The checkout section one does feel like a closing moment in a way, and then the bronze level store loyalty card really works with its title well, because this song does sound like it's advertising something, getting you to want to get something, that is, and it sounds very reminiscent of something that would be in a commercial or trying to sell you something. I said that a few different ways there now, but it's trying to show you how great this thing is that you would be signing up for, and that being the loyalty store card in this situation seems like it works really well. I appreciated that nod, and it was a really good way to end it out on like a very positive, upbeat note, because this song, once again, sounds very cheery and sounds very inviting, very nice. So yeah, this is definitely the most ambient leaning one of the bunch, and I really appreciated its concept, its flow, everything about it in that regard was really quite good. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about the last one we're looking into here, so cut to the outro. So that was trying to get into Vaporwave, and I feel like that was certainly a successful experiment. I really loved everything that I heard. I at least liked everything that I heard. There's some things that I'm going to be returning less often than others, but I'm going to be returning to all of this, and I genuinely think that I am going to come back to these 5 albums in particular quite often. I have to say I'm most excited to check out more of the catalog behind Saint Pepsi and Blank Banshee. Those two may have been my favorites, but I also am aware that Death's Dynamic Shroud has some much more conceptual and interesting projects. Not that that one wasn't interesting, that's not what I meant at all. I loved that one that I just listened to, but very interesting things are also present in their catalog, and I plan to check out a lot of that as well. Grocieries was a whole vibe. Totally into it. So yeah, I don't know if I can at this point say that I'm into Vaporwave, but as far as getting into Vaporwave, this definitely worked. So if you're yet to do so, I mean, maybe check out these 5 albums. They're going to be linked in the description below. A couple other things. Let me know what you thought of this format, and if you want more videos in the future like it. It was a pretty fun one to do, so I'm definitely doing 2 more of these, which are going to be noise music and shoegaze during this 2-week no old music challenge. And I will also update you in the next video on how that is coming along. We're a week in tomorrow, so in tomorrow's video I'm going to be talking about it. But with all that being said, let me know what you thought of these albums down in the comments section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Drop a like on the video if you did like what you saw today, and subscribe to the channel for more music related content coming your way. Hit the bell for notifications on that same thing as well. And that is just about going to wrap it up for this one, and I will see you in the next video. That snap was really weak. There we go.